So I went and saw The Northman, which is a Viking movie directed by Robert Eggers, who, full disclosure, I am a pretty big fan of. I actually didn't see his first movie, The Witch, until a few years after it had already come out. There I was, just browsing Netflix for a dumb horror movie to fall asleep to, and then I didn't sleep at all. Robert. A few years after that, I saw The Lighthouse twice, first on my own at 3 in the morning, as is tradition, and then later with my dad while we were both on edibles, which I highly recommend. And after realizing they were both made by the same guy, I thought, I guess I should keep an eye on this dude. Cut to a few years after that, The Northman comes out of fucking nowhere, and I thought, I am not waiting for this one. Immediately went and saw it at my local Dead Mall, and after finishing it, I am pretty comfortably sure that this guy just cannot make a bad movie. The Northman is actually based on an Old Norse legend that is widely attributed as the inspiration for Shakespeare's famous play, The Lion King, I mean Hamlet. So if you know that story, you'll be familiar with the basic beats. The main character is a prince named Amleth. His father, King Orvindel, is betrayed by his brother Fjolnir, who usurps his kingdom and steals his wife. Amleth is forced to flee, but not before swearing revenge, promising to avenge his father, save his mother, and kill Scar. God damn it. There's your basic summary. Now it's time for the good shit. One thing that's really interesting about this movie is that it portrays itself less like a story that we are watching unfold in real time and more like a modern retelling of a myth. And just like any good myth, much of it is exaggerated and embellished for the purpose of accentuating the themes and ideas of the story as well as just pure entertainment. And if I hadn't accepted this so early on, I probably would not have enjoyed the movie as much as I did. There are a number of moments in this film that from a narrative perspective feel very convenient or at times arguably contrived. But if you view the movie from the perspective of an embellished retelling of a revenge story, rather than a fully grounded historical piece, these moments become much more palatable and allow you to focus on the greater intent of the movie as a whole. And I do get that approaching a story this way is a lot to ask of the average moviegoer, but I would also argue both of Eggers' previous films demand a similar level of give and take from their audiences. It's part of what makes his films such unique experiences in the first place. Weirdly enough, it was actually the physique of Alexander Skarsgård, the actor playing Amleth, that convinced me of this idea. Robert Eggers has never been a slouch when it comes to the details in his historical settings, and while Vikings were muscular, I would bet money they were not this ridiculously fucking jacked.
Oh my god, you could grind meat on it.
But from a thematic standpoint, giving the Viking berserkers such an exaggerated muscular appearance really does hammer home the perception that they are these inhuman, beast-like warriors who carve their way through battlefields like literal gods of war. But what's impressive to me is that even in his depiction of Vikings as these unflinching warriors, Eggers manages to avoid romanticizing them. The battle scene from the trailer specifically is uncompromisingly horrific and really emphasizes the disposable nature of human life at the time. Those who weren't strong enough to defend themselves against a Viking raid became a commodity to be traded and discarded at a whim. Because Vikings, while good at fighting, were also really good at these things. So yeah, Vikings were not always the most morally upstanding individuals. Who knew? But I think this more brutal tone works well for a revenge story specifically, because while the justification for Amlet's quest does become very, very muddled near the latter half of the movie, there is a sense of moral absolutism that keeps the film from becoming too unfocused. And this is a good time to bring up the movie's incorporation of Norse mythology. Robert Eggers very much enjoys playing the grounded historical aspects of his films against more supernatural elements relevant to the setting and time period. And while the Nordic deities very rarely play a direct part in Amlet's journey, you can feel their influence in a number of instances. In fact, his journey only really begins once he receives a prophecy from Osiris giving him a nudge in the right direction, played by Bjork. Throughout the film, there's a constant feeling that the gods are guiding and assisting Amleth on his quest, while still giving him the chance to prove his worth as a warrior on his own merit. After all, this is a culture in which you do not get to go to heaven unless you die with a weapon in your hand. Because even though Amleth ends up killing a fuck ton of people he probably didn't need to in his search for vengeance, there's never a sense that Amleth is ever unjustified in his actions. From the gods' perspectives, Fjolnir murdered his brother, usurped his throne, and tried to kill Amleth to cement his claim. Therefore, any hardships or torment that Amleth inflicts upon him are completely justified. And this fairly simplistic framing of the story allows the movie to move forward with a sense of purpose, which eventually culminates in a conclusion that feels simultaneously tragic and inevitable. inevitable. But this is also not to say that the movie is naive about the way it frames this conflict. At the end of the day, Amlet's goal is revenge, and there are very few things he's unwilling to do to achieve that end. And there are a few key scenes that acknowledge the fact that some of the things Amleth does are extremely difficult to justify from a moral perspective. Like, I don't know how you guys feel, but I think murder might be bad. Revenge stories by definition are gratuitous because revenge itself is a gratuitous act. And on a primal level, this can be very appealing to an audience. After all, there's a reason John Wick is in Fortnite. But while this film uses moral simplicity to hone its focus, it is mature enough to acknowledge the consequences and sacrifices that come with acting on desires based in hate. And while the satisfaction of watching Amleth take his pound of flesh is, on a base level, satisfying, there is a grim sense of inevitability in this film that prevents us from forgetting that revenge, at its core, is a fool's game. This delicate balance between primal gratification and consequential tragedy is what makes a revenge story satisfying without just devolving into pandering to our more destructive instincts. But regardless of how open you may personally be to experiencing this kind of story, there's still a lot to appreciate about The Northman. The presentation is still exactly what you'd expect from an Eggers film. The cinematography is outstanding as always, with some gorgeous establishing shots that help enhance the more fantastical and epic elements of the story. Robert Eggers is a supremely talented director, and there are times when it feels that the camera work is dictating the flow of the story as much, if not more, than the dialogue. And even as fantastical as some scenes can get, there is such a sense of place that shows off just how much time and effort Eggers puts into recreating an authentic historical setting. By having such careful attention to detail in its world design, even if the story of the Northman isn't totally grabbing you, it's possible to just enjoy getting lost in this vertical slice of history, which is something I really enjoy about his movies in general. I also really love the performances here as well, but admittedly I don't have a whole lot to say about them because they were just really well done. I don't know if Eggers is just really good at directing younger actors, but I enjoyed Oscar Novik's brief performance as young Amleth a lot more than I thought I would. Alexander Skarsgård does a great job of portraying the unhinged fury of a Viking berserker while still having enough range to carry the more intimate moments as well. Claes Bang is really good as Fjolnir, and I struggle to think of anyone other than Nicole Kidman who could have fulfilled the role of Queen Gudrun half as well as she did. Willem Dafoe is here too, and honestly, after his performance in The Lighthouse, if he just wants to spend the rest of his career being the weird guy who shows up and then is weird for a few minutes and then fucks off for the rest of the movie, I think he has earned that. Anya Taylor-Joy is fantastic as always, though I did hope she was going to play a more active role in the story at certain parts. This is not to say that she's irrelevant to the plot, but considering how they set up her character versus how she was actually utilized, it feels like a bit of a missed opportunity, but that's definitely more of a personal gripe and doesn't really take away from the story, so I don't know why this paragraph exists. I'm just typing out words on a page, and words aren't even real, so I don't know where this is going. To put it very simply, The Northman is a very good movie. This is Robert Eggers' first real big-budget project, and for how it turned out, I'd say it was a success. Not necessarily a financial success, but considering it's an R-rated historical art house film with some out-there supernatural elements, that's not really surprising, but it does hurt me very deeply in the pit of my ass.
Got a severe case of butthurt.
And I think this is part of what makes Eggers' films difficult to recommend to general audiences. They very much expect you to be on board with what they're putting down from the get-go, and like any good art piece, his movies have the potential to toe the line a bit between what makes a good story and what makes a purely entertaining story, which is not a bad thing. And while The Northman is not my personal favorite movie Eggers has made, that goes to The Lighthouse, or maybe it's The Wit. I don't know, man, I'm a fucking fanboy. I can't hide it. I do think this is the most approachable movie he's made thus far. There have been some rumors stemming from interviews by Eggers that there may have been some studio tampering with the final product. However, Eggers has made it clear that while there was more production oversight due to the budget he was working with, he is adamant that the final product does not diverge from his original vision. Now, some of the things he said do lead me to believe that he may return to smaller scale projects where he can maintain full creative control, and and part of me is happy for that. But I also feel like this is just a taste of what he can accomplish with a fully loaded budget, and it sucks that this might be the last we get to see of it. But for what could arguably be considered his mainstream debut, the fact that he was able to maintain his original vision for the film to such an extent is a pretty notable achievement. At the end of the day, I do think this is gonna be one of those love it or hate it movies for a lot of people. It's a solid 8 out of 10 for me, and honestly, I'm just glad we have another good Viking movie besides How to Train Your Dragon, so good on you, Bobby. Keep up the good work. So that being said, guys, if you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you very much. You didn't have to do that, but you're so polite you did it anyway. I've got a couple more videos in the pipeline coming up, so if you feel like doing that like, comment, subscribe thing some of you guys are into, I ain't gonna stop you. Nobody's gonna stop you. It's totally legal. For now. You can also follow me on Twitter, where I say very normal things all the time. Other than that, guys and gals, y'all have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Later.